I'm reading a few pages from this book, Germany in Its Deep Humiliation from 1806 by it was printed by a guy named Palm, I believe, from Austria or Germany. And I don't know who the author was. I'm not sure if anybody ever said who it was, but he printed it. And Napoleon murdered him for it. And the reason is because the book exposed Napoleon and what the French were doing for what they were, which were basically just a bunch of genocidal, monstrous maniacs. It's all they were, working for Team Jew. And yeah, basically Napoleon and his soldiers, as I showed in other videos, they were basically just Bolsheviks or pre-Bolsheviks. And so I'm just going to read a few pages from this book talking about some of the things that they did, or that Napoleon or his soldiers did. And I'm going to try to read the book in its entirety in separate videos. So, and on the right there, are just a couple of paintings. One top one's from the French Revolution. I believe those were a bunch of French nobles or aristocracy who were going to be murdered. And then the bottom were a bunch of Spanish citizens who were being murdered by the French, quote unquote French. Here are a few prior videos I did on Napoleon. Um, the top one is from later on from his descendants, but talks about their involvement in the 1848 Jewish Revolution and central banking, which is Jewish. The one underneath that is from 1804. So it's prior to this book that I'm going to read from. And that talks about, yeah, the French Revolution conspiracy and some other stuff. Um, and then under that was a news article about Napoleon trying to take over the Holy Land for the Jews. So who was he really fighting for? And I believe I did another video, which isn't here, on the French being hired as mercenaries in America, I think in the War of 1812, I guess by England, and the French committed heinous crimes against the Americans, rape, murder, etc. These are the same soldiers that Napoleon was using in Europe to rape and murder Europeans. Who do you think these soldiers were? So, left is the German original, and right is the Google translation. So, yeah. So anyway, here he's talking about the people being forced to pay for shacking up French soldiers, the German people. Um, so right, he's saying if it costs 3 or 4 guilders a day for a French soldier's maintenance in a German home, then somebody who has 200 guilders will be, bankrupt in 4 weeks. And then it says, let me see, where is it? Oh, it says in several Bavarian towns, the most hateful scenes came to light. For example, it is said of Passau, maybe that's a German town in Bavaria, that various women were lured into horse stables, raped to death, then led away in a cart and buried. Right? So these are quote unquote French soldiers raping and murdering beautiful German women. Were these really French soldiers or were these Jews? Either way, it's awful, but this is what they did all over Europe. So, um, and then in this on this page, what does it talk about? Um, it says that the farmer obviously was deprived of his animals, right? And then when he went to restock them, the French took them away. The French used deceit, cunning, and force to do all this. It didn't matter if the Germans, you know, pled for mercy. Um, so yeah, and it just said that the Germans would be sent to the grave, uh, It says, whom this doctor would have sent to the grave earlier simply dies a slower death at the hands of another, right? He was starved to death. Um, so yeah, who else did that, huh? When else were Germans, Russians, etc. starved? During the Bolshevik Revolution, right? And the Holodomor, when the Jews took away all of the farm equipment and murdered, well, yeah, murdered the farm animals and confiscated crops and dammed waterways. And yeah, so yeah, and then they're doing similar things here by taking away the animals. It's the same people. So here it says the Duke of Enghien in the territory of the Elector of Baden was taken by armed troops, by French troops, dragged across the Rhine to France, and there shot without trial or justice. Hmm. Who else was murdered without a trial or justice? Oh, I know. The Germans at Nuremberg. Thousands, tens of thousands, really millions of Germans were murdered after World War II without a trial. And they did nothing wrong anyway. So why would there be a trial? And the Nuremberg was not a trial. It was a tribunal, not the same thing. So, um, and it says here that the French troops kidnapped the Duke, and yeah, they had there you go, a military tribunal, just like Nuremberg. There was no trial. He was denied proper legal defense and executed. Holy cow, that is exactly like Nuremberg. It's unbelievable. So, and it says under that, it says Napoleon executed the Bourbon prince. So he was royalty. He was a Bourbon. Said they had flimsy evidence. It violated international norms. Well, so did the Nuremberg Tribunal. Um, yeah, and then on the top, I just had a little info on the Duke and what happened. Right, it just says that he was kidnapped, he was murdered. It's controversial. His full name was Louis Antoine Henry de Bourbon, whatever. Sorry, he was a member of the House of Bourbon, and that was a royal family Napoleon had helped overthrow. Um, so he opposed the revolution and Napoleon. And anyway, yeah, so you can read the rest. Basically, Napoleon killed him because they claimed that he was going to try to assassinate Napoleon or something like that, but there was no actual evidence for it or anything. So yeah, I mean, literally, Napoleon and his cronies were Jew Bolsheviks. I haven't found definite proof he was a Jew, but I can almost guarantee you, Napoleon and all his generals and all the people that supported him were Jews. So just need to find, uh, very rare stuff. I'm sure that the Jews have wanted to destroy. I think I've probably read some stuff from Julius Streicher. I think that talks about stuff like this. Here it says that the Russians have threatened or actually undertaken new hostilities, and therefore they're making an excuse why a French army needed to be in Bavaria or Germany. And then the writer says, as if there was not enough French in Italy to resist the Russians, right? He's being tongue in cheek there. But if this is not the case, why are the soldiers who are so burdensome to the poor Bavarians not brought to the place where they are needed? As for Germany, it is certainly the case after the hardships it has suffered. So it's just so what I found interesting here is that it's mentioning Russia as being a threat to Europe, right? While at the same time, Napoleon is taking Europe over and murdering and genociding and raping the European people. And that more French troops are needed to defend Europe. What a freaking joke. And that's 220 years ago. And it's the same propaganda as today in 2025, right? I was told by some European friends that in Europe, the big bugaboo is that Russia is a big bad threat. Meanwhile, the real oppressors, the Jews, and all of their third world nignogs that they're letting in there are destroying Europe, right? They're already within the gates. It's not Russia, although the difference is 220 years ago, Russia was Christian, run by Christians. Since 1917, Russia has been Judaized and is completely and utterly run by Jews, just like every nation now. Putin is a freaking Jew, and everybody around him is a Jew. He's not a good guy. He's a freaking bastard. So he's doing crap for the Russian people. So what's left of him anyway. And here it talks about how Napoleon married his dirty family into the royal house of Bavaria. And it says Princess Augusta of Bavaria married the where is it? Married Eugene de Beauharnais. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, he was the stepson of Napoleon, I guess. And yeah, and so the king of Bavaria, unfortunately, maybe he had to, agreed to marry his eldest daughter to Napoleon's family, which then made them, the quote unquote royals, even though they were nothing. They were nothing, probably, but dirty Jews. So, um, and yeah, it says that the eldest daughter of this prince, the princess, who had been the pride of all the high houses in Europe, in it says inferior in blood to any princess in our part of the world. I'm not sure what that means. Had to stand at the side of a. So he's naming the last name of Napoleon's stepson. So had to stand at the side of Napoleon's stepson to transfer the first royal nobility to Bonaparte's obscure family, insignificant, nothing family, who were just a bunch of Jew revolutionaries. That's all they were. So a bunch of murderers. Unbelievable. So I think that's all I had here. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to try to read the whole book probably in 2 or 3 parts.